Okay, I'm going to start this morning by welcoming you guys. Welcome back. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone online as well. What we're going to be doing this morning is I'm going to first teach you loving kindness meditation, and then afterwards we'll do a session together. Normally we start class with meditation, but I'm going to first teach this to you so that you understand it before we actually do the meditation. So as always, if you guys would like to ask questions, we have the microphones here for you guys. And then for those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. So I'm just going to switch over to some visual aids here. So loving kindness meditation is a meditation that's going to help you to completely transform the mind away from anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike. Oftentimes people think that this is coming from other people, but what you saw from the Four Noble Truths is that all of that is coming from your own mind. It's not coming from the outside world. So you need to be able to uproot this anger and hostility, this bitterness in the mind. And loving kindness meditation is one of the tools that's going to help you to be able to do this. You still need breathing mindfulness meditation because that's what's eliminating craving, desire, attachment. That's the underlying cause of the anger and frustration. But you also need to go in and break up the anger and frustration out of the mind as well. So I'm going to help you guys to understand this. And then, like I mentioned, we'll do a session together. So there's these 4 types of meditations that the Buddha taught. Breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to eliminate the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment, that mind that is longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of its affection. It can only be happy if it gets what it wants. And then if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry, sad, frustrated, or some other discontent feeling. You're then cultivating the wholesome qualities of mindfulness or awareness of mind, and you're also developing concentration where you can have focus and clarity. So this is what you're doing on a regular basis. And we're actually even going to be doing this prior to the loving kindness meditation. But now you're going to be learning loving kindness meditation, which goes in and eliminates the anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions. And it helps you to develop loving kindness for all beings. What loving kindness is where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well without judgment. There's active goodwill towards others without judgment. What I mean here by no judgment is, I'm not sure if you guys were taught this, but oftentimes people are taught this way. They will say, don't respect others until they respect you first. If you've been taught this, and if everybody practiced this, nobody would be respecting anybody, because you would say, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. And then that person would say, well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. So everybody's stuck. You're in a log jam, right? So if you did that with your loving kindness, where you're not willing to practice being loving and kind until other people do something first, that is not loving kindness, because what you're ultimately getting to is unconditional love, where you love individuals and all beings unconditionally, that there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to love this person. So if you're waiting for someone to do something before you will have love and kindness towards them, that's not unconditional love. There's no such thing as conditional love, but we might call that conditional love, is that if you do these things, then I will show that I love you. But if you don't do those things, I won't love you. That's not true love. So you would like to get to the point where you have love and kindness for all beings, and they don't have to do anything in order for you to have that love towards them. This is unconditional love. So you like to have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And this needs to be cultivated in the mind. This is the antidote or the wholesome root. This is the remedy for anger, hatred, and ill will. Oftentimes when people get angry and bitter and hostile with someone, the other person's going to get angry and hostile and bitter right back. That's not going to solve any anger and hostility. You can't eliminate anger with more anger. The way you eliminate anger is you bring in loving kindness. That's what's going to eliminate the anger. So this is going to help you eliminate the harshness, the bitterness, the hostility, the resentment in the mind. Oftentimes people hold on to this in their mind, thinking that it's the way to get back at the other person, because they think it's the other person who caused them to be angry, and they think the way to get back at them is to hold on to this anger and hostility. But the only person that's getting harmed is you. It's kind of like holding on to a hot coal and trying to burn somebody else. The only person getting burned is you. Sometimes people hold on to this resentment and hostility long after the relationship's over. Sometimes if you have an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend or some other person that was in your life long ago, they might even be dead. Sometimes people still hold on to this resentment. It's just harming your own mind. So this loving kindness meditation is going to help break that up and get rid of it so you don't keep experiencing that harm within your own mind over and over again. When you learn about the Brahma Viharas in this course, you'll understand that loving kindness is the very first Brahma Vihara, or these 4 healthy mental states. So, as I mentioned yesterday, the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha. Everything else plugs into this. Loving kindness plugs into the Eightfold Path. Without loving kindness meditation, you wouldn't be able to practice the Eightfold Path. These are just some of the places where it plugs in. If you remember right intention, where the Buddha taught having the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness, well, the intention of non-ill will, that's a double negative, that's goodwill. Right? So you're developing the intention or the thinking or the thought of having goodwill in the mind towards others. But how could you ever do that if you didn't have a technique to be able to accomplish it? So that's why the Buddha taught loving kindness meditation, so that you can have a technique to cultivate this in the mind, because all of your speech and actions are going to emanate from your intentions. If you have wholesome intentions, then your speech and actions can emanate from that. So this meditation is going to help you to develop the right intention, the intention of non-ill will, and harmlessness as well. If you remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Well, that mind of loving kindness, how could you speak that way if you didn't have loving kindness in your mind, right? So that's why loving kindness meditation is being taught. Here is a teaching from the Buddha where prior to this, he was actually reminding his students that he was teaching them to speak at the proper time, what they say is true, gentle, beneficial, in the mind of loving kindness. But he was reminding them also that other people are going to talk to you in an untimely way. They're going to speak to you with falsehoods. They're going to speak to you with harshness. They're going to speak to you unbeneficially, and they're going to speak to you with a mind of inner hate. And he says, when people speak to you in this way, this is what you would like to practice. He says, okay, when people are speaking to you in that way, he says, herein, monks, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person with a mind filled with loving kindness, and starting with him, we shall reside enveloping the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, joyful, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train, monks. So here he's saying to maintain your loving kindness. Even when other people are speaking to you in unkind ways, you need to reside with your loving kindness still intact, because oftentimes people don't do that. That's how you're going to bring your loving kindness to full growth, full perfection, and full development. It doesn't mean you stay in the conversation, right? If someone's being bitter and harsh and hostile to you, it's not the proper time to talk. The best thing to do is just walk away. And they might actually become more angry and more hostile, but you're not actually causing that. It's their craving. It's their longing, yearning. So you need to remain with loving kindness towards all beings. So this individual who's talking to you may be bitter and harsh and hostile. You need to maintain your loving kindness. Understand that this is impermanence. Some people are going to talk to you in polite, kind, friendly, respectful ways. And other people, they're going to talk to you in impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful ways. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll see that about 99.9999% of the time, people are being loving and kind and warm and gentle with you, because that's the way you've been for an extended period of time. In order to get to enlightenment, you need to bring your practice up to the Eightfold Path and live your life that way for an extended period of time, multiple years. And by having done that, you will extinguish all the unwholesome karma. where people are being bitter and harsh and hostile to you. But right now, you've been bitter and harsh and hostile to people in the not so distant past. And because of that, you're still going to experience people being bitter and harsh and hostile to you. So you're going to need to bring your practice up where you're being loving and kind and using all these factors of the Eightfold Path and live your life that way for an extended period. And when you're in that process, people are going to be bitter and harsh and hostile with you occasionally. And now, if you continue to be loving and kind, it will extinguish this. So, for example, if you have a parent or a sibling or a life partner who's being bitter and harsh and hostile with you, well, if you've been bitter and harsh and hostile with them in the past, their mind is used to you doing that. So now, just because you're choosing to learn how to be loving and kind, and maybe you start practicing that, it doesn't mean that they're going to start being loving and kind to you right away, right? So now in the past where they would be bitter, harsh, and hostile, and you were bitter, harsh, and hostile, you need to be able to do things differently. When they're bitter and harsh and hostile to you, now you need to be loving and kind. And you're going to need to do that for an extended period of time. And part of being loving and kind is oftentimes just walking away from the conversation. That's usually the best thing to do. And now when they get used to they are being bitter and harsh and hostile to you, and you just walk away, and that happens over multiple situations, they can see you don't engage with them when they're bitter and harsh and hostile. Slowly but surely, they will actually change the way they function because they can see that it's not you that is angry, it is them. It's coming from their mind. You're not causing them to be angry. And slowly but surely, they will transform the way that they interact with you. Sometimes it can take multiple years for this to occur. You're going to need to be diligent and dedicated, committed to your own growth and development in cleaning up your mind and cleaning up your life to be able to be willing to walk away from those conversations where in the past you might have stood there and argued and fight and push your chest out. It's almost like two wild animals fighting till death. You would like to just walk away from those situations. Okay? So this is how loving kindness plugs into the Eightfold Path. We might even say that right action is a practice of loving kindness. Because you're not killing, you're not stealing, you're not having sexual misconduct. Same thing with right livelihood and all the other teachings. There's loving kindness embedded in that. Here are some other places where the Buddha was teaching about loving kindness. This is his son Rahula that he's teaching. Sometimes people think that the Buddha left his family and never came back. This isn't actually true. The Buddha still actually came back towards his family. They actually ended up learning with him. His wife ordains with him, his son, his stepmother, many of his cousins and brother-in-laws and people like this. Many people from his family were actually learning and getting to enlightenment. So here he's actually teaching his son, Rahula. He says, Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. This is how a Buddha speaks. Very clear, very concise, and very precise. You don't need to interpret their words. You don't need to figure out what he's saying. It makes it very clear for you that it's loving kindness meditation that will eliminate your anger, hatred, and ill will. That's what's going to eliminate it. It's just very clear. You can't misunderstand that, right? So that's what you need in order to eliminate all of that anger and hostility and all the lesser versions too. Even the slightest dislike towards others and even towards yourself. Sometimes people have negative self-talk in their own mind. You can eliminate that through this meditation. Here the Buddha says it again. Loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. Very clear. Very concise, very precise. You don't have to figure out what he's saying here. You don't have to interpret it. So here, the Buddha is teaching. I'll set this up for you to help you understand what he's teaching here. So during the lifetime of a Buddha, you might think that he's the only one teaching, right? Because if you live during the lifetime of a Buddha, you'd probably like to study with the Buddha. But not everybody knows who a Buddha is, because a Buddha doesn't go around performing countless miracles to try to convince people that they're a Buddha. Their teachings are independently verifiable, so they just start teaching. And then their students can slowly but surely independently verify their teachings, right? So there were other people teaching besides the Buddha during his lifetime. You might think he was the only one teaching, but there weren't. There was other people that were claiming that they actually had figured out how to get to enlightenment. So there were people studying with those students, and there were people studying with the Buddha too. And oftentimes these students would get together and they would kind of talk and compare notes, like, what is your teacher teaching you? And what is your teacher teaching you? Even today, people kind of do that. Students will get together and talk about what their teachers are teaching them. So the Buddhas knew that his students would oftentimes get together with other students from other teachers. So what he's saying here is, suppose they ask, meaning suppose those students from other teachers ask, but what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned? You should answer, liberation of the mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, any unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. So unarisen anger is the fetter of ill will. This is the deeply rooted container in the mind. Like right now, you're probably not angry. You're just sitting here listening to someone talk. But you have anger in your mind. You have this fetter of ill will in your mind. If one of your cravings, desires, attachments get triggered, that ill will arise. That's unarisen anger, that it hasn't arisen right now in this present moment, but it's in there, kind of waiting in this little box. And that box can get opened at any time if somebody triggers, if your mind gets triggered and there's a certain attachment that gets triggered or a certain craving that gets triggered, right? So the way to ensure that that unarisen anger does not arise is loving kindness. And then arisen anger is when your mind is actually angry. The way to get rid of that is loving kindness, right? So whenever you see anger in your mind, you practice loving kindness. That's what's going to get rid of it. Because if you allow your mind to stay wired with anger, it's just going to keep staying that way. Your mind is going to keep being angry all the time. So you've got to stamp this out. So wherever you see anger arising, you would like to bring in loving kindness. So the example I gave yesterday, like say you're checking into the airport and they tell you that your flight's delayed and you can't check in your bags yet, and you notice anger starting to arise, bring in loving kindness. Where maybe in the past you might have been bitter, harsh, and hostile to this person. Instead, bring in the loving kindness. Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you letting me know. I didn't realize the flight was delayed. When can I check in my bags again? Oh, 2 hours from now? Okay, thank you. By the way, is there a lounge somewhere around that I could just kind of like relax while I'm waiting? Right? You just be polite with this person, because any anger that's coming up, it's not being caused by that person. It's from the craving. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that this loving kindness is what's going to eliminate the unarisen anger. And it's also going to eliminate any arisen anger. That's how you're going to get this out of the mind. Okay. So there's this loving kindness meditation that is being done in order to essentially fill up the gas tank. But then you've got to go out into the world and be loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. You're not going to eliminate your anger, the bitterness, and the hostility by just meditating alone. That's why there's the entire Eightfold Path. You need the loving kindness meditation. That's like filling up your gas tank. But then you need to go out into the world through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, and be loving and kind in your day-to-day life. You couldn't actually do this, but let's just say you could. Let's say you could meditate for 23 hours a day, right? And now 1 hour per day, you go out into the world and you're bitter and harsh and hostile with people. You're not anywhere close to enlightenment, right? So you need to take this technique that you're doing in order to cultivate and develop the loving kindness in your mind, and now allow that to come through your intentions, your speech, and your actions when you go outside in the world and interact with people. So this is going to help prepare your mind. But now when you go out into the world, through right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, you start practicing being loving and kind with the people around you. That's what's going to really transform this, so that now more and more you can experience improvement in your day-to-day life. Because when you put out bitterness, harshness, and hostility, that all is coming back to you. You can look in the relationships where you're bitter and harsh and hostile. You can see those people are that way with you too. It's just going to keep coming back to you. So if you're going to extinguish this, you need to work on your own mind. And now more and more, you'll experience improvement in your day-to-day life. So do you guys have any questions on what loving kindness is and why it's important and how you need to be able to practice this? Anything you guys would like to ask? No? You have a question, Keisha? Yeah.
I guess, like, just practically, if somebody was speaking very harsh and hostile to you, like, how would you break it down to make sure you're, I guess, still experiencing and practicing loving kindness, but seeing it for what it is so you're able to handle it skillfully?
Yeah, in most cases, I'm going to just walk away from that situation. There's some rare situations where you're not able to walk away. But in most situations, I'm just going to walk away. I'm not going to talk to that person and have further discussion. I'm just going to end the conversation and move on. And I don't have to tell them that I'm ending the conversation. You can just walk away. And sometimes when you do that, they actually get more angry because they have a craving to talk to you. They're trying to impose something on you and they're trying to force something on you. And when you walk away, that craving can't get fulfilled and they get even more angry. And this is helping you to see that you're making a wise decision to walk away because it helps their mind to let go. The way you need to see this is just see it as impermanence. Some people are going to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. Other people are not. That's just impermanence, right? The world is impermanent. Not everybody's going to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful. Another way you can see it is don't insert a you into this, because sometimes people think that they are disrespecting me, right? Or they're being impolite to me, right? That's the personal existence view that you're inserting. Instead, just look at it as a sound that's coming through the ear. It's just like a walk, 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 walk. Did you ever watch Charlie Brown? Do you ever watch walk, 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 walk? That's all it is, right? And now you just, okay, well, can't talk to this person because it's not the proper time to talk. Because remember, the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, it's not the proper time to talk. They're angry. Nothing's going to be beneficial in talking with this person. I'm just going to walk away. Right. So in some rare situations, you can't walk away because maybe you're in a car driving with someone at 60 miles an hour. Right. So in that situation, just seal it. Just say nothing. Right. And if it's really harsh and hostile and bitter, and you can ask them, would you mind stopping the car? And then when they stop the car, just get out and go somewhere else if you can, right? It just depends on the situation. Each situation is different because, you can't have this plug and play where it's like, if this happens, do this, or if that happens, do this, because the variables are unique. The variables are different. I've had situations where I've been teaching here and people have been bitter and harsh and hostile, very rare, but it happens maybe once a year, twice a year, something like that. And I can't go anywhere. I'm sitting in front of a whole class. So instead, I just tell the person, our conversation is finished. I'm not going to address this any further. If you would like to talk, please, you're welcome to come talk to me when your mind is more calm. And then now I will talk to someone else and answer another question. So sometimes you can't go anywhere, but you would like to not continue the conversation because that's just going to make it worse. Mm-hmm. And there's no benefit from it anyway, because nothing's getting in at that point. They're so angry.
If you take it personally, is that just the personal existence view that makes it more difficult?
Yes.
Okay.
The Buddha has this teaching where he says, whenever you're experiencing contact, that you should, he says, just see the scene as the scene, the heard as the heard, the recognized as the recognized, essentially. And then ultimately what he gets to in that teaching is he says, there is no you there, right? What we tend to do is when we hear something, we insert a you into it, right? That they are being disrespectful to me, or they are walking on me, and I'm not going to let them walk on me. This is part of the ego that the ego does. Instead, you just need to look at it for what it truly is, which is this person is choosing to speak in unkind ways, and it's no reflection of me because there's no me here. But because there's a personal existence view in the mind will insert a me or a you, and that's where there'll be even more anger. But if you get rid of that and you just understand that, okay, these are just words, these are just sounds that that person is choosing to make, doesn't affect the mind, and you can just move on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So while we're talking about loving kindness meditation, I'm getting ready to teach you how to actually do it. It's helpful to do loving kindness meditation in the morning, because then when you go out into your day, your mind is full of loving kindness. We'll talk more about kind of various aspects of loving kindness meditation after we do it and you guys get a chance to practice it. But while I'm thinking about it, I'd like to let you guys know that out of your 2 or 3 meditation sessions that I recommend you build up to in a day, that in the morning is the best time to do your loving kindness meditation. That doesn't mean you couldn't do it in the afternoon or the evening, because you surely could. Because let's just say you get a phone call at 2 p.m. and this phone call, whatever happens, it triggers one of your cravings, and now you notice anger is in your mind. Well, if you know what the Buddha taught, which is loving kindness eliminates anger, sit down and do a loving kindness meditation. 2 p.m., 3 p.m., it doesn't matter. But on a kind of regular basis, if you're doing loving kindness in the morning, it'll fill up your mind with loving kindness, and then you can go out into the world, and all your conversations and all your meetings and all your interactions, you'll have loving kindness permeating in your mind, right? So out of your 2 or 3, make at least one of them loving kindness. In the morning is ideal for this. But if you're dealing with a bunch of anger during a particular time frame, you could actually make all 3 loving kindness if you would like, right? There's no harm in actually doing that, because the way that we're going to do this loving kindness meditation is we're going to actually start with breathing mindfulness meditation. So we're going to start with the chanting. Then I'm going to guide you in a breathing mindfulness meditation session. There's going to be a brief period of time where you're doing breathing mindfulness meditation, just like 3 minutes or so. Then we're going to come in with the loving kindness meditation. What you're going to hear me saying is these phrases like, may I be peaceful. When you hear that, you repeat that in your own mind on the out breath. Then I'm going to say, may I be safe. Again, repeat that within your own mind on the out breath. May I be well. Again, and then may I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Then we're going to go to wider and wider rings. We're going to do things like, may mom and dad be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness, and so forth and so on. And we're going to eventually get to all beings. It's important to understand while we're doing these phrases that this is not a prayer. This is not trying to change other people. This is not trying to invoke some special power to change mom and dad. This is actually transforming your mind. This is rewiring your mind so that you will have more loving kindness in your mind, so that when you spend time with mom and dad, you can be more loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. That's where your transformation of your mind and your relationships is happening. That if you're bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationship with your parents, well, they're going to probably be bitter and harsh and hostile with you right back, right? But if you start changing and you start being loving and kind with people, that's what they're going to get used to. And more, that's what you're going to experience in those relationships. So this meditation, and even no meditations, are to change other people. You can't change other people through your meditation. If it was possible to change other people through your meditation, there would be no such thing as murders, rapes, child abuse, or anything like that, because we would all get together, people like us, and we would all just meditate, and then we would magically change the entire world. So sometimes you will hear people talk about loving kindness meditation as if they are sending loving kindness to other people. It's not possible to send loving kindness to other people. You're cultivating this within your own mind so that then when you actually are interacting with those people, you can be loving and kind in your interactions. And that's where the real transformation is happening. Okay, so we're going to go through these different affirmations. I'm going to do about 6. You're going to ultimately need to customize this on your own. I'm going to do affirmations or phrases that are applicable to all of us. But if you have someone named Bob or Susie or Rebecca in your life that you have anger and frustration towards, you're going to need to do, when you do this on your own, May Rebecca be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontent. You're going to need to customize this meditation for your specific needs. You can do a person, like an individual, or you can do a group of individuals. If you have anger and hatred towards police officers, you would like to say, may all police officers be peaceful and safe, well, and free of discontentedness, or whatever. May all politicians be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness. Whatever it is that you have anger and hatred towards, whether they're currently in your life or even if they're long gone in the past. If your mind's still holding on to anger and hostility, you've got to let that go. Even if this person is dead and you'll never even see this person again, if you're holding on to anger and hostility, it's just affecting your own mind, and you need to liberate your mind from that anger and hostility. Okay, so after these affirmations, we're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation, and then we're going to come out of that with some chanting. And then we'll have a little chat and see what questions you guys have, so that then you can get any kind of last help that you need before we move on. And then each morning, we're going to be starting with this meditation. So you guys will get an opportunity to practice this over multiple days. Okay? You have a question?
You mentioned that this could be a saying, may all police officers be peaceful and so on. Why are you not stating, may I be peaceful towards all police officers? Like, because if you are making a statement about others, and earlier on you mentioned that we cannot change others, why are you not using the I in that statement?
Because the I doesn't exist. Even though here we're saying, may I be peaceful, right? You're basically saying, may this being who you are be peaceful. And sometimes people do it that way. But this is what works. You know, sometimes people look at what I'm teaching and they're like, why don't you do it this way? And why don't you do it that way? And why don't you do it that way? And they try to change. You're not interested in changing a Buddha's teachings. This is what will absolutely work. I know with 100% certainty, because when you do this meditation, you will eventually get to the point where there's no anger and hostility in your mind. And this I that you're looking for, it just doesn't exist. This is part of what's called personal existence view. The universal truth of non-self helps you to see that that's not there. So in most cases, wherever possible, you'd like to get rid of that. But every once in a while, you're still going to need something like this in order to be able to do the meditation. But some people will change this to, may this being be peaceful. Okay. All right. So I'm going to guide you guys in this session. If you guys would like to join, there's the chanting, and then I'll come in and guide you from there. Okay. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakawa สัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสขะโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these phrases in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have caused me harm be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So this is loving kindness meditation. This is how we're going to start each one of our mornings from this point forward. So you guys can get the experience of meditating with loving kindness each morning and seeing how that affects the mind going forward. It's important to keep in mind some other things that the Buddha taught about loving kindness meditation and the elimination of anger. He gives this really great analogy that's going to help you to understand what's going to be happening over the course of spending time to meditate using this meditation. Is he talks about this digging tool, that there's this digging tool that has a wooden handle, and every single day you're digging with this wooden tool or this handle that has this tool that has a wooden handle. Each day you're wearing away wood from this handle. You're not going to know how much wood you're wearing away from the handle each day, but you're wearing away wood from the handle every day as you're using this digging tool. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where you're going to need to replace the handle. So you're not going to know how much wood you're wearing away each single day, but you're going to know when you need to replace the handle because it's exhausted and you need to replace it. The same thing is true about your anger, the bitterness, the hostility in the mind. When you're using loving kindness meditation and you're practicing to be loving and kind in your day-to-day life, you're not going to know how much anger and hostility you're wearing away each day, but when it's completely gone, you're going to know that. Because it'll be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You haven't been angry, hostile, bitter, harsh with anybody whatsoever. And the way that this is going to happen is it's going to happen in certain relationships. You're going to see maybe with your parents that you clear this out first, perhaps. I don't know. I'm just giving you an example. Maybe not. Maybe your parents are the last ones that you end up clearing that out with. But just example, you might notice that you don't have any more anger towards your parents. And you might notice like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years goes by. But maybe with your life partner, you still have anger and hostility. And then as you're continuing to do this loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life, eventually you're going to wear away that anger towards your life partner and towards your children and towards your coworkers and people like this. Eventually you'll get to the point where you haven't had even the slightest ickiness in your mind towards anybody, not even the slightest dislike. So it's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Sometimes when people are first starting to do this, they say, I don't feel the loving kindness. It's important to understand that loving kindness is not a feeling. A feeling arises, it changes, and it fades away. What you're looking to do is cultivate the unconditioned mental quality of loving kindness, where loving kindness is just always in your mind, and there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for that to be there, that you can be loving and kind with everybody around you. Again, there doesn't need to be any conditions met for that love and kindness to be actually practiced. So this is a meditation that you're going to need to customize. You're going to need to insert certain people in your meditation, and they might be in there for a period of time, maybe a few days or a few weeks. When I was doing this initially, there were times where I was actually in business at the time, and there were times where maybe I was having difficulties with a certain employee or a certain customer, and they would be in my meditation for a few days or a few weeks. There was a time where we had a landlord who came in, and he actually got up in my face and he threatened to kill me in front of my employees and in front of my customers. He was in my meditation for about a week or so. There were times where I got cut off in traffic on the way to work, and I would feel this frustration coming up in the mind. So for a few days, I would say, may that person who cut me off in traffic be peaceful, right? I didn't even know their name, but you're not interested in allowing the anger to dwell in the mind. You've got to uproot this and get this out of the mind. So when the anger is coming in, it's kind of like a weed that is just starting to grow, and you'd like to uproot that out of your mind so that it doesn't continue to grow in your mind. So you can insert people into this, or groups of people, and they might be in there for a period of time, and then eventually they're maybe going to be taken out. When I first started doing loving kindness meditation, I had a lot of anger and hatred towards myself, and I had a lot towards my mother as well. So the way that I used to do this when I first started is I used to do myself about 2 or 3 rings. So I would do, may I be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness. May I be peaceful, safe, free, and discontentedness. May I be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness. Then I would go to my mom. May mom be peaceful, safe, and well, and free, and discontentedness. I'd do her three rings, and then eventually I'd get to all beings, right? And then I was done, and that was it. And that's what I did for a good 6 months. And you can even use visualization when you're doing this meditation, because remember, there's breathing mindfulness meditation where you're focused on the breath, and anytime your mind moves off, you cut off and let go and come back to the breath. But this is a different meditation. You're trying to permeate the loving kindness and bring it up in the mind. So one of the things I used to do is I used to envision my mom sitting in front of me as I was meditating, and that there was like this molasses that was encompassing her body. Because remember, there's this words from the Buddha where he says, starting with him, encompassing the all-encompassing world with loving kindness. So it kind of envision this molasses kind of enveloping mom, and this molasses was my loving kindness, right? And I would visualize this in my mind as I was actually meditating. And it took a good 6 months for me to get rid of that anger and hatred towards my mom and towards myself. And I noticed that it was improving, because when I would spend time with her, I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't angry or frustrated. There weren't fireworks that would go off, because whenever mom and I would get together, it was like fireworks would go off, right? So all that started to be eliminated. So you'll notice that this gradually is eliminating out of the mind. It's not going to be instantaneous that this type of thing happens. And you're not looking for a feeling. You're looking to permeate the loving kindness in your mind so that it's unconditional. It's just always there. Starting out in the morning, it's really great to do this. And then know that you're going to need to customize your meditation. And then over time, you'll see that you'll have people kind of coming and going in and out of your meditation. So the breathing mindfulness meditation at the end of loving kindness meditation, this is to help you cut off and let go of any kind of anger and frustration that has come up in the mind. There were times where at the present moment, I wasn't upset or angry with mom, for example, but then when I would do this meditation, I would start remembering some of the things that happened when I was a child. And then by the time I was done the meditation, I would notice that the mind had some anger in it. So that's where the breathing mindfulness meditation at the end is helping you to cut that off and cut that off and cut that off as part of the breathing mindfulness meditation. So you can end with a mind that is, peaceful and joyful. And then as you're customizing this, you're doing this meditation in the morning, then understand that you can do it at some time during the day if you'd like. There's really no kind of like set schedule. You'd like to be able to start up your day with a lot of loving kindness in the mind. And then as you go through your day, you're able to practice through your intention, speech, and actions being loving and kind. So any questions on the loving kindness meditation here? Anything you guys would like to ask? Okay, one other thing I'll share with you guys. When you're customizing this meditation, you'd like to have about 6 to 8 rings. Anything more than 6 to 8 rings, it's usually kind of too much for the mind to really manage. And typically what people will usually do is they will start with themselves. You always start with yourself, and you always end with all beings. In between that, maybe ring 2 and 3, you end up doing rings of individuals or groups of individuals that you already have loving kindness for. That helps to kind of bubble up the loving kindness in the mind. Then ring kind of like, what would that be? 4 and 5, or even 4. You might do like kind of like a more neutral, it's people that you don't necessarily hate, but you don't necessarily love them either, right? Maybe like coworkers or neighbors or something like that. And then ring kind of like 5, 6, or 7, right in that area, the louder part. You would like to do people that you do have anger towards, people that you do have hatred towards, people you do have resentment towards, because you like to kind of bubble this loving kindness over into that group. And then ultimately you end with all beings. You're not interested in leaving any beings out whatsoever. Right? And then you go back to your breathing mindfulness meditation, and then you come out with the chanting if you're going to do that. Okay, so this is loving kindness meditation. You guys will get a chance to practice this each morning. Okay, how are you guys feeling? Would you guys like a break at this point? Because I can take a break here, or I can teach for about another 30 minutes or so. There's another topic that I'm going to share with you guys, but we can also take a break as well. Anybody need a little break? No? No break? Okay. All right, so let's go on then to this next topic. This is called identifying cravings, cultivating non-craving and analysis of the mind. This is where I'm going to teach you how to go in and almost surgically remove cravings, desires, attachments from the mind. Because the Eightfold Path is a generalized training. It's kind of like painting with a wide brush. This is actually going in with a kind of a fine-tooth comb and really kind of surgically removing any cravings, desires, attachments. So you're going to need to practice the Eightfold Path consistently. So if you're not yet practicing that, something like this, you wouldn't necessarily do, but you would focus instead on learning and practicing the Eightfold Path. But once you have that well underway, the next part is going in and identifying your cravings, desires, attachments. Just as a little refresher, we talked about this yesterday. What a craving is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection. It's not the object itself, it's the way the mind longs and yearns for it. So for example, let's just say that I had a liter of water in my car and I'm on my way to a hiking trail, and I drive my car to the hiking trail and I get out without taking the water with me, and I'm 30 minutes down the trail and I realize, oh my gosh, I forgot my water. And now I hurry up and go back to my car, and I twist my ankle on the way, and I sling open the door, and I'm like, oh, water, right? My mind's all shaken up because I'm craving that water. I'm longing, yearning for it. I want it to be permanent. There could be a second person who also has a liter of water in their car, and they forgot it. And now they're 30 minutes down the trail, and they're like, I forgot my water. I'm going to be out here for about 6 or 8 hours. I should probably turn around and get my water. And now they just calmly make their way back to their car and they get their water, right? So the craving, desire, attachment isn't the water. It isn't the liter of water. It's the way that the mind is longing, yearning for this, right? So that's what you're looking to identify as part of what I'm going to teach you, is how to go in and be able to identify what are the actual cravings, desires, attachments that you have. What is the longing, yearning that the mind has? That's what you would ultimately like to be able to eliminate out of the mind, okay? So the number one goal in the path to enlightenment is to eliminate discontentedness. The Buddha makes this very clear. That's what his teachings do, is they eliminate discontentedness. And the way that you do that is by eliminating craving, desire, attachment, those longing, yearning, because that's what's producing the discontentedness. But how could you ever eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments if you couldn't identify them and you didn't know what they actually are? So identifying your cravings, desires, attachments is the second most important skill that you could have. Meditation is a very important skill and ability that you need to develop. But the very next one that you need to develop is the ability to look inward and actually identify your cravings. Your own mind is what's going to be able to do that, your mindfulness. So you're always going to need breathing mindfulness meditation. That's training your mind to let go, let go, let go. And you're also going to need to practice generosity. And you're going to need to practice mindfulness or awareness of mind to watch over the mind. And then whenever you see a craving, desire, attachment, you're going to need to apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. But I'm going to teach you here something with this mental discipline section that is going to help you to now go in and actually surgically remove this. And the way that I think about this is I think about it like driving a car. If you were driving a car and a red light on the dashboard of the car came on, what would you do? Well, you'd probably pull over. Right? You're not going to keep driving the car with the red light flashing, right? You're probably going to pull over. And if you have some skills, you're probably going to pop the hood and you're going to start looking under the hood to see if you can see what's going on under the hood. But if you don't have any skills about how to fix your car, you're probably going to take your car to a mechanic and let the mechanic open up the car and then figure out what's wrong with the car, right? So in this scenario, with your discontentedness, when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're sad, when you're lonely or bored, when you're feeling guilt or shame or fear, or stress or anxiety or any of these other discontent feelings, that's the red light on your dashboard flashing, saying, hey, you've got something going on here in your mind. You've got a craving, desire, attachment, because discontentedness cannot exist in your mind unless there's a craving, desire, attachment. Whenever you have discontentedness in your mind, it's always coming from a craving, desire, attachment. So what you would like to do is you would like to pull over. And you like to start looking inward and start looking at what are your cravings, desires, attachments. And if you don't have those skills and you don't have those abilities, what you do is you take your car to the mechanic. In this scenario, the mechanic is your teacher. You can go talk to your teacher and say, hey, teacher, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that. I'm trying to figure out what my attachments are, and I really can't figure it out. Can you help me? And if you do this 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 or 5 at the most, you'll eventually build this skill and this ability to be able to look inward and be able to see your own cravings, desires, attachments, because your teacher's not going to be with you permanently. They are impermanent. So you need to build this ability. You need to build this ability to look inward and be introspective. So I'm going to teach you guys this process that you can follow in order to be able to identify your cravings, but then also put a plan together to go in and almost surgically remove these out of the mind. Here's the way this works. Whenever discontentedness is arising, based on the Eightfold Path, you will see with your mindfulness that this discontentedness is arising. You would like to cut it off and let it go, catching it sooner and sooner, potentially as a bodily sensation. You'd like to catch it as soon as possible. If you're practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness and you notice the tingling in the body, the tightening in the chest, the tightening in the throat, the heat in the face, and the pressure in the skull, this is the early warning system. You're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. Each of these discontent feelings, whether they're conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, they all have bodily sensations associated with them. And more you can clue into those. And if you notice it arising as a bodily sensation, cut it off and let it go. And if you don't notice it until it's a feeling, because that's the next part, then cut it off there. And if you don't notice it there and it affects the condition of your mind, then cut it off there. This is the 4 foundations of mindfulness that we taught yesterday. Okay. So you'd like to cut off and let go of your discontentedness. Then once your discontentedness is gone and out of the mind, which can sometimes take minutes, hours, maybe even days before you get it out of your mind, that's where you'd like to start looking inward and start reflecting and figuring out, what am I longing, yearning for here? There's some craving for permanence. What is it? And now when you see what that craving for permanence is, and you understand and you identify this craving, then you're going to develop a plan to eliminate that specific craving, desire, attachment. If it's a craving, desire, attachment that's producing pleasant feelings, those conditioned pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria, you're going to need to distance yourself from that particular craving, desire, attachment. If there's something that's causing painful feelings or neither painful nor pleasant feelings, you're going to need to actually integrate that thing into your life. And you're going to actually need to start interacting with that particular thing in order to train your mind to overcome those painful feelings by getting rid of the craving, desire, attachment. Once you develop this plan, which I'm going to give you guys some examples of this, then you repeat this over and over and over and over again, all the while taking care of your breathing mindfulness meditation and your generosity, making sure that you're doing that, because that's training your mind generally to let go of craving, desire, attachment. So let me give you some scenarios where you can see how this works. There was a period of time where when I was training my mind, I actually was driving my wife's truck because I didn't have a car at the time. And I was driving my wife's truck, and I actually happened to be at a red light, and I reached down to grab my mobile phone, and I realized that my mobile phone wasn't with me, that I'd left it at home. Right away, there was fear that came up into the mind because I didn't have my mobile phone with me. In the moment, I cut that off and let it go. I cut it off and let it go. I cut it off and let it go. And I was sitting there at a red light. And now after I got that fear out of the mind, I started looking inward. I moved to the second step. I started reflecting. And I was like, what's going on here? Why is the mind experiencing this fear? And then I was like, the mind's craving this phone to be permanent. The mind wants the phone to be permanent. Well, my initial thought was to turn around and go back and get the phone, because I could have easily swung a U-turn. I was only 5 minutes from the house, and I could have went and got the phone. But that doesn't solve the problem, because the cause of this problem was the craving, desire, attachment in the mind. Going and getting the phone doesn't actually solve that, because then the mind just holds on to the phone. I'm interested in getting rid of this fear, because I would get pleasant feelings when I'm outside with my phone, but when I don't have my phone, these painful feelings come up in the mind, the fear. So what I needed to do is I needed to distance myself from this phone. So while I was supposed to only be out for an hour and a half that day, I decided to extend the amount of time that I was out. I was outside for like 5 or 6 hours. I went to go eat food. I went to go to the movies. I went and did all kinds of stuff. And then when I eventually came home, I didn't just run and go see the phone and see who was messaging me and see what I missed. Instead, I just left the phone where it was at. And I started spending time with my son. And maybe 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later, then I went and looked at the phone. Okay, now I'm looking at the phone. So now I decided about 2 or 3 days later, I was going to do this again. I was going to intentionally leave the phone at home. So I intentionally left the phone at home. And now when I went outside, it felt awkward. It felt weird to be outside without the phone. But I still did it. I went outside for like 5 or 6 hours, did all the things that I was interested in doing. And then ultimately I came home and I didn't just go look at the phone. I left it where it was at. And I did some other things. And then after about an hour or so, I went and looked at the phone. Then I waited about 5 days. And then I did it again. And I left the phone at home and I went outside. And this time I didn't feel awkward. I didn't even feel the slightest little bit of fear or anything. I was like, wow, this feels great to go outside and be comfortable without the phone. Right. So now I went outside, did all the things that I normally do. And then I came home and once again went to the phone after about an hour or so. And now I was like, this craving seems like it's actually gone. This is really nice. There's much more peacefulness in the mind. About 2 months after that, I accidentally left the phone at home again. This time I was riding on my motorbike and I reached down to grab the phone and it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, well, and I just kept on driving. No fear, no awkwardness, no nothing. I'm just like, oh, well, I've done this before. I've gone outside without the phone. No big deal. And I just kept driving, right? And then I went and did all my stuff. Well, about a year after that, I accidentally dropped the phone and the screen shattered. And I picked it up and I looked at it and I started laughing. I was like, of course it's shattered because it's impermanent. And fortunately, my wife had another phone that I could use because at the time I didn't have any funds to be able to purchase another phone. So I was able to use her second phone, and I was able to use that for a while, right? But if I was attached to this phone when it broke, I would have been upset. I would have been angry. I would have been frustrated, right? So more likely than not, you're probably attached to your phone. If you have a phone, you're probably attached to it. If the idea of leaving your home without your phone just even bothers you thinking about it, you're going to need to leave your phone at home. You're going to need to go outside without your phone and train your mind to be comfortable with that, because that's something that gives you pleasant feelings. You're going to need to distance yourself from it and train your mind to be comfortable without it, because you know you're comfortable going outside with it, but now you need to introduce some impermanence and go outside without it so your mind can be comfortable with that. I'll give you another example with something that's pleasant, that you might have pleasant feelings from. Let's just say you go to a restaurant, and every time you go to this restaurant, you order a big piece of chocolate cake. And boy, is that chocolate cake good. And every time you go to that restaurant, you eat this chocolate cake, and it's like, wow, this is really good. You get so excited every time you get this chocolate cake. Well, let's just say one day you show up to the restaurant and you order your chocolate cake and they say, sorry, we don't have chocolate cake. And you notice the frustration and anger coming up in your mind. Well, you can see that your mind's attached to this chocolate cake. You're craving for it to be permanent and you're getting pleasant feelings from it. So you're going to need to distance yourself from this chocolate cake. You're going to need to choose to either not go to that restaurant at all for an extended period of time, multiple months, and not order this chocolate cake, and or you're going to need to go to that restaurant and choose to not order the chocolate cake, even though they have it sitting right there and you can see it in the big window, and it's like, oh my gosh, would I really enjoy getting my arms and hands on that? And you're going to need to restrain your mind and choose to not eat it. And you're going to need to do that for multiple months and train your mind to let go. And then eventually, when your mind has let go, you'll be able to start eating the chocolate cake again, but you'll be able to enjoy it without conditioned pleasant feelings. And then when they don't have your chocolate cake, you can still be peaceful and you can still be joyful. Okay, so this is what you do with things that you have pleasant feelings from. But there's going to be some things that you have painful feelings from. Let's just say if you go around large crowds, you get fearful and you have stress and you have anxiety. You're not going to eliminate this craving, desire, attachment by avoiding large crowds. That's what the mind usually does, is it has aversion. It'll think like, I never want to be around large crowds ever again. And you'll try to avoid a large crowd. But that doesn't actually solve the problem, because the craving, desire, attachment is still in your mind. You're still carrying around that burden, right? Instead, what you would like to do is you would like to introduce that into your life. You would like to go around large crowds and spend time around large crowds and train your mind to be comfortable and content and peaceful in a large crowd. You might maybe one day be walking down the city. You might be walking down the block and you turn the corner and well, wham, they're in the middle of a political protest or something like that. So if you don't eliminate the craving, desire, attachment in your mind, the stress and anxiety is right there waiting for you. But if you start exposing your mind to a large crowd, you can actually train your mind to let it go. Here's another example. Do you guys know what durian fruit is? You guys know durian fruit? Have you ever had durian fruit? Do you like it? Yeah, you don't like it, right? I never liked it when I first started eating it. I thought it smelled like poop. And I don't know if you ever had poop in your mouth. I've never had poop in my mouth, but when I put this in my mouth, it seemed like it was the consistency of poop, right? So when I put it in my mouth the first time, I was repulsed by it. I was like, oh, that's the most horrible thing ever. It smells like poop. It feels like poop in your mouth. I don't want to be anywhere near this fruit, right? So that's why some hotels, they ban it, right? They don't like durian fruit in their hotels because it has that smell of poop, I think, right? So what I did is I decided, okay, right, you're going to cut off and let go. And then you reflect and you see that you're craving a certain flavor on the tongue. The mind is repulsed by this. It's pushing it away. It sees this as being disagreeable. What you need to actually do as part of your plan is, of course, keep with your breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. But because you get painful feelings from this durian fruit, you actually need to implement it into your life, and you need to start eating it. And this is what's going to train your mind to let go of the craving, desire, attachment. But the actual raw fruit was too much for me. So what I did instead is I started eating cake that had durian in it, because obviously I like cake, right? So I started eating cakes that have durian fruit in it, and it didn't have the same strong, pungent smell, and it didn't have the same consistency. But when I ate the durian cake, over time, my mind started associating this nice flavor of the cake to durian. So I was eating that regularly. And then ultimately, after I did that, I was able to start eating the raw fruit again and expose the mind to that. And then I was fine, right? So now I can eat durian. It's no problem, right? If there's apples, bananas, and, durian fruit, I'm probably going to take the bananas, but I can eat the durian fruit. I'm not repulsed by it any longer. I've eaten it many times, right? So this is what you would like to do. If there's anything you're having painful feelings or neither painful nor pleasant feelings, you'd like to actually implement that into your life. Expose your mind to it. With modern psychology, they call this exposure therapy, where you expose your mind to the stimulus that is causing the mind to get triggered with the craving, desire, attachment, and produce the painful feelings, so that now you can overcome that by exposing your mind to it. Okay? Yeah, you have a question? You just knew I was about to ask questions, right?
You mean when I don't like garlic, I need to eat that to overcome that?
Yes.
But I cannot eat everything I don't like.
That's because of your sensual desire. There's something called, when we call it craving, desire, attachment, this is a way of referring to it in a more generalized way. The fetter, or the pollution of the mind, is called sensual desire. This is the pollution that the Buddha discovered. There's 10 of them, the 10 fetters. The sensual desire is where the mind is longing, yearning through your sense spaces, and it wants permanently agreeable contact. Your sense spaces are your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. This is how you experience contact. And this is how your mind is chasing after pleasant feelings. And it can only experience pleasant feelings if you have agreeable contact, something that you see to be agreeable. And that's the only time you can experience the pleasant feelings. So your ability to experience pleasant feelings is actually shrinking the more cravings, the more central desire you have in your mind. So in your case, on the tongue, when you taste garlic, you see that as disagreeable to the mind. Where in reality, it's the odor. Okay, so the odor, the smell, right? So the only thing that's happening here is that it's just an odor and it's not permanent, right? So like, let's just say you're walking down the street and you smell flowers coming out of a flower shop and you're like, wow, that is such a great smell. Wow. You feel so excited about that. Well, now you walk a few more steps and you smell the sewer. And now you're repulsed by that and you're pushing this away and you get angry and frustrated and you don't like it, right? This is because of your central desire. The mind is longing, yearning through the nose for permanently agreeable contact. But that's not the world you live in. You live in an impermanent world. So if you're getting repulsed and you don't like this garlic, you're going to need to expose the mind to this, because the mind's trying to push it away and say, no, I don't ever want to experience garlic ever. But if you expose the nose to this and the tongue too, then this will actually train your mind to let go of that central desire, because holding on to that central desire just allows the mind to stay polluted, and it's burdensome. It's a burden to carry this around. This is one of the reasons why an unenlightened being will get tired and exhausted, right? If you go out in your day and you come home at the end of the day and you're like, wow, this was such a great day. I feel so great. That's because all your cravings, desires, attachments were getting fulfilled. But if you go out in your day, like you go to work and you come home and you're like, this was such a horrible day, that's because your cravings weren't getting met and you weren't getting what you wanted. But when you get this central desire out of the way, every single day is a wonderful day because you don't have any cravings. Everything's happening. It's just contact. But when you have central desire in your mind, you're going to see this contact as agreeable, or you're going to see it as disagreeable. And you can only be happy when you're having agreeable contact. So you would like to get to the point where you don't have that central desire. But you can't do that if you just keep pushing away garlic and pushing away garlic and pushing away garlic. You're going to continue to carry around this burden of central desire, of craving, desire, attachment. So when we talk about how the mind performs optimally and you get focus and concentration, clarity, and deep memory, it's through eliminating these pollutions. If you allow the pollution to continue to stay in the mind and you keep pushing away garlic, then you're not actually getting rid of the pollution of the mind where it's holding on to this central desire. So the only reason why your mind doesn't like garlic is because of its central desire. It sees it as disagreeable. You're going to need to expose the mind to it in order to train the mind to let that go. And now the mind can be happy and joyful, whether you smell garlic or whether you don't. Where now, if you smell garlic, you don't like it, and you're maybe irritated or frustrated or annoyed or whatever feeling arises. You would like to get to the point where if you smell it or you don't smell it, you're completely fine either way.
That means if somebody has fear in flying, they should fly.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. It's completely opposite of what the unenlightened mind thinks. The unenlightened mind wants to push it away. That's aversion, where you're pushing away a situation or you're pushing away a person and thinking that that solves your problem. That doesn't solve your problem. So, for example, if you are afraid of spiders and every time you see a spider, oh my gosh, it doesn't solve your problem to push it away because you're going to see a spider at some point. And now maybe you go 5 years without seeing a spider, but at some point you're going to see a spider, and now you're scared. So you haven't actually solved your problem, right? The way you solve your problem is you start looking at pictures of spiders, and you go to a museum that has spiders, and you go to a pet store, and you go out in the woods, and you look at spiders, and you look at them, and you're like, there's nothing wrong here. They're just another living being, just like me. They're not causing me any harm. I can see the spider, and I'm not scared of it. That's how you get rid of the central desire in the mind.
More the things I don't like to eat. Yeah. There's so much I don't like to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say, try this or this,
You can go ahead and speak. Well, one by one, if you're interested in getting to enlightenment, you would like to chip away at this because all food is to nourish the body. But your mind's looking at it as this food is to please the tongue and to please the mind. And if this food isn't going to please the tongue and it's not going to please the mind, I don't want it. So your mind's looking at food as something to give you pleasure. And you can only have pleasure if this food tastes good. But the thing is that you're not going to always be able to eat good tasting food because the world is impermanent. Sometimes you're going to eat food, it's not going to taste good. And now you're going to be angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. So you're going to need to, if you're interested in getting to enlightenment where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful and you experience all those other benefits that I've talked about, is you're going to need to expose your mind to the foods that you don't like. And now over time, your mind can let that go. And now you won't have that central desire in your mind anymore. And you need to start with the Eightfold Path, get that well underway with the breathing mindfulness meditation, generosity, all of that. Probably a good, 6 months, a year that you're really getting that underway. But then you're going to need to do these kinds of things to really start affecting the mind and challenging the mind. But by that point, you'll have the tools to be able to train your mind to let go, and you will have seen some progress by that point, and you'll see your mind becoming more peaceful and more joyful, and you'll start being interested to challenge the mind like this. I used to actually look for these kinds of things. It's almost like wringing out a rag and trying to get all the water out of the rag, that when you see your mind becoming more peaceful and more light and more joyful, you're kind of looking around and trying to say, what else is in there that I can get rid of? Because it's a real burden carrying around these cravings. You probably feel exhausted sometimes at the end of your day, right? Do you feel exhausted sometimes at the end of your day? Yeah. An enlightened being doesn't experience exhaustion. They get sleepy, but they don't get exhausted. They don't get tired. They have energy all day long. They can sustain their energy all day long because they're not carrying around the burden of craving, desire, attachment. Craving, desire, attachment is like a burden on your shoulders. Probably when you go into a restaurant, you have to look through the menu a lot and try to figure out exactly what it is that you want. Where an enlightened being, they can eat anything and they can be completely joyful and cheerful because they're not using the food for pleasant feelings. They're already experiencing happiness and joy before they ever sit down for their meal. And now it doesn't matter what they eat. Of course, they're going to choose food that has a nice taste, but sometimes they're going to eat food that doesn't have a nice taste. And now they can maintain their joy. They can maintain their happiness. But it sounds like you're not able to do that. And you'll never get to that point if you don't expose your mind in this way that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hello? Okay.
Mhm.
So it's the same thing, but the opposite problem. I think I love food. Like I I always get happy when I eat or
Mhm.
drink, but
Mhm.
like probably too much. So I think sometimes it's easy to tell when you have painful feelings, but like my eyes get such pleasant feelings when I eat. So how
Okay.
would you address that?
Okay, the first thing I'll share with you, you'll learn this tomorrow, but I can share it now, is it's actually impossible to love food. The mind, once you understand what true love is, we use this language in the unenlightened state. We'll say, I love chocolate, right? Once you understand what love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You can only love a living being. It's not possible for you to love an inanimate object because love is unconditional love where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, right? So what you might have is you might have a craving for food. You might have a longing, yearning for food, where someone can have a craving for chocolate, right? And now they have this longing, yearning, and every time they eat chocolate, they get all these pleasant feelings. And what people will say is, I love chocolate. Well, in reality, you have a craving for chocolate in that situation. And now they get these pleasant feelings when they eat chocolate. So what you would ultimately like to be able to do is get to the point where, in this example, you could eat chocolate and you could enjoy it, but you're not getting conditioned pleasant feelings. This sounds sometimes strange for people who aren't used to this because normally they only enjoy something if they have conditioned pleasant feelings. But you can actually train your mind to get to the point where you can eat something like chocolate and you can enjoy it for the moment. And then when it's over and you move on to the next thing. And it's not affecting the mind. That's what the mind needs to be trained to be able to do, where you don't have conditioned pleasant feelings. So do you truly get happy or excited when you're eating? Is that what's really happening? Yeah. Okay. So you're going to need to be able to cut this off and let it go. One of the things you're going to need to do is, I don't know if you ever do this. Do you go extended period of time without eating? Do you ever do that?
Not when I
Okay. So let's just say you eat every 4 hours, right? Over time, you'd like to kind of slowly make that longer and longer. And you're going to need to do it at a time when you're not going to deplete the body, and that, you are able to rest and be comfortable with this, because you need to train your mind to go 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours without eating, for example, because you can actually go 3 weeks without eating and you wouldn't die. Sometimes people think they would die if they don't eat in a certain period of time. You're going to experience hunger pain, and you're going to notice that the body's experiencing this pain, but you need to tell the mind that the that the physical pain of the physical comfort of the body is not permanent. Even as an enlightened being, you will experience discomfort in the body sometimes, but that's a physical discomfort. You won't experience emotional or mental discomfort by the time you get to enlightenment. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to go extended period of time every once in a while where you can not eat and train your mind to still be happy and still be joyful, even though you're not eating. You might still drink water, of course, but there's no flavor there, right? And now maybe 8 hours or 10 hours you haven't eaten, and now maybe you'll eat, and now maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 days you eat regularly. And while you're eating, you also train your mind to not have pleasant feelings. So whether you're eating or whether you're not eating, you would like to maintain your joy and maintain your peace and not allow your mind to get conditioned feelings just because you're eating food. Yep. This is actually what I normally do as part of this talk is I have this group activity where people kind of share some of their cravings and how can I fix this? What is the plan that I need to put together to be able to solve this? Do you have a question?
I don't know if it's partially already answered. That's why, but I might as well ask it. So I understand that you need to be exposed to things that can potentially incapacitate you, like the crowds, like if you have fear of flying or fear of driving, for example. I also agree with the food, like certain foods like are nutritious, like for example, fish. Now I can eat fish. I wasn't, because kind of like the same thing that you had with durian, right? And I understood, okay, fish is good for me and it's very important. So now I eat fish. But specific things like, for example, durian, which I don't like it either. Well, I know you like it now, but like I have the same feelings. Like now I can just pass durian and stand full of durian, and it doesn't really affect me, the smell. But I wouldn't understand the benefits of trying to eat durian because it's just, I guess it doesn't really affect you in life because in my normal life, because I don't think it's super nutritious. Like you can live all your life healthy without having to necessarily have taste durian. Like where I'm from in Europe, it's not even known. And I wouldn't really see the benefits on specifically expose myself to physically eating, durian. But I don't know if I'm taking what you're saying too much in the stream. So that way I wasn't sure to ask the question.
Yeah, it's what I was talking about here, that your mind has sensual desire. Any contact that you have through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and then the mind itself, the mind craves permanently agreeable contact. And as long as you keep allowing that sensual desire to be in your mind, you can't get to permanent peace and permanent joy. Let me give you an example that doesn't involve food so you can maybe see it here. Let's just say I'm at a traffic light and someone pulls up to me with music that I like and that I listen to this music regularly. Maybe I'm excited, so excited to hear that music, right? Dancing in my seat. Well, now I'm really happy in that situation. But when I pull up to the next traffic light and somebody else pulls up to me with a different type of music, now you're angry and you're frustrated because you don't listen to that kind of music. That's because of the sensual desire. The mind is longing, yearning through the ear for something that is agreeable to you. And now you can only be happy when you hear those types of sounds. If you hear this sound or maybe other sounds, maybe like a jackhammer or something, you get angry, you get frustrated. So you can't get to permanent happiness and permanent joy as long as you have sensual desire in your mind. So I'm not saying you need to eat durian every day, but you're going to need to expose your mind to it to the point where you've trained your mind to no longer have that sensual desire, that you see durian fruit as something that you see to be disagreeable. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have agreeable and disagreeable contact anymore. It's just contact. It's something you're seeing through the eyes. It's something you're hearing through the ears, smelling, tasting, feeling on the body, or thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. Like Keisha asked, I think, the question about when somebody's being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you in their speech, how do you handle that? Right? And the Buddha was teaching you to remain unaffected, train your mind to remain unaffected. Well, you can't do that as long as you have sensual desire, because you're going to hear the sound of someone yelling and hollering. You're going to see it as either agreeable or disagreeable. And now you're going to be frustrated and angry. And now when that feeling's coming up in your mind, you're going to act upon that potentially through your speech and actions. And now it's going to cause unwholesome results for you. So you need to stamp out any type of sensual desire that the mind has. So where you see that the mind has sensual desire, you're going to need to address it. And with durian fruit, if you're repulsed by it, you're going to need to eat it occasionally until you get to the point where your mind is just fine with it. And you're like, yeah, this is durian fruit, and you can chew it, and you can just see it as something that sustains the health of the body, not something to please the tongue. Again, it might not be something you choose to eat regularly. Like if I have a table of fruit, I'm not going to pick the durian fruit first, but I have no problems eating the durian fruit or smelling the durian fruit. And I've eaten it multiple times in order to make sure that's the case. And then the mind is now free of that sensual desire. So the benefit is that you're going to get to peace and joy. You're going to eliminate this sensual desire, and you're not going to need to carry around this burden of the sensual desire.
So just to check that I understood it, so it's more a way of training the mind. The benefit will be more a way of training the mind, like an opportunity to train the mind, rather than like I don't get repulsed by durian. Like I can smell it. It's just like I don't like the taste. But also like a situation in which I need to eat durian is I don't see the point on eating durian, because a universe in which like I can only be sustained by durian is very unlikely. But I think you're saying is that take the opportunity to train the mind.
Yes.
Is that what we? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you understand that craving, desire, attachment is the cause of discontentedness, as long as you allow craving, desire, attachment in your mind's not free. It's not liberated. If that taste of durian fruit hits your tongue, you don't like it. And now the mind is experiencing some discontent feeling. So the mind's not free, right? And you've got to be careful with the mind, because it'll try to justify all these different things. The mind will try to justify what it's doing and what it's experiencing. It's kind of like it'll allow dust to collect in the corners, right? The house is maybe pretty clean, but there's some dust in the corner, right? And you've got to get all that dust out of the corner, because if you have that dust in the corner, the mind's not liberated. Maybe that craving only gets triggered once every 5 years, but your mind's not free. It's not completely enlightened yet. Maybe for the most part of your life, everything's quite peaceful, everything's quite joyful, but every once in a while, a craving gets triggered, and you can see your mind's not actually enlightened. So you got to get every single thing out of the mind in order to completely free it of all the pollutions. And that's where the liberation and the freedom of the mind is. So you would like to challenge the mind and train it to let this go. And wherever you see these types of things, you would like to implement it, bring it into your life so that you can train your mind to get rid of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
This works. Oh yeah, it does. I listened to the example of the durian, where it's not necessarily to be expected to be exposed even to durian. That's why you were asking, oh, why should I?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for those of you guys online, the question was, should you eat poop? It would be unwise to eat poop, because there's bacteria in poop that if you ingest it, it's actually going to cause harm to the physical body. poop is not food. So it's not something you need to train your mind to be able to eat. Just like poison. You don't need to expose the mind to poison through the tongue, because that would be unwise, because you would actually kill yourself, right? So any kind of food, you would like to be able to expose the mind to it. So whether it's, like one point I didn't like tomatoes when I was a kid. Now I think they're great. I eat them all the time. At one time I didn't like bell peppers. Now I can eat bell peppers with no problem, right? There's different fruits like this, or different vegetables that the mind will tend to be repulsed by. It'll see it as disagreeable based on the thing. There's a vegetable here in Thailand called bitter squash. It's very bitter. It's very pungent. And when I first ate it the first time, I didn't like it. And now I can eat it, no problem, right? So anything that's food, you need to expose your mind to that. But if it's something like poop, it would be unwise to do that. One of the things that's beneficial about going to a different country is you're going to be exposed to things that you otherwise wouldn't be exposed to in your own country. One of the best ways to train your mind to get to enlightenment and eliminate the attachments is to travel to a different place than where you grew up, because your mind will tend to get acclimated to the things in that environment. And you'll notice when you go to a new environment, you'll have certain cravings, desires, attachments that you didn't even know existed. So in this case, it's a fruit that doesn't exist in your home country. This is actually helping your mind to be in a country that does have this fruit, because now she can train her mind to get rid of that central desire. When I was growing up as a child, I would share this with you guys to help you understand how important it is to move to another place. When I was growing up as a child, I grew up in the USA. And in the USA, pretty much everybody wears cotton underwear. I mean, obviously they have other styles of underwear because it's impermanent, but I grew up wearing cotton underwear. And that's the way I always grew up. Well, when I moved here to Thailand, finding cotton underwear was not very easy, and they're very expensive. So I started getting these synthetic materials. Well, when I was wearing these synthetic underwear, I had difficulty sleeping because the body was used to this agreeable material of cotton, and that's what the mind was always used to, and the mind had gotten attached to that. Well, if I would have just stayed in the US for my entire life, I would have never known that the mind was actually attached to that. But by moving here and experiencing synthetic underwear, I needed to train my mind to be comfortable with that and to be able to fall asleep. Literally, I would lay in bed for 2-3 hours at night, couldn't fall asleep because of this synthetic underwear that was on the body. During the day, I was fine, but I couldn't fall asleep at night. So I started doing it. I started wearing this synthetic underwear intentionally to be able to train the mind to let this go. And I would have never experienced that had I not moved to this country, right? Well, now, after having trained my mind that way, I actually do wear cotton underwear. I've been to the USA not too long ago, and I bought 30 pairs of cotton underwear. But I already had trained my mind to get rid of this craving. But I know that cotton underwear worked better for me because sometimes when you get out of the shower, things are a little bit moist, and having the cotton underwear to kind of absorbs that moisture instead of the synthetic underwear, right? So I just wear cotton underwear all the time, but I know that my mind doesn't have a craving for it anymore. But I would have never been exposed to that had I not moved to this country. So just because your home country doesn't have these certain things doesn't mean you should avoid it. You should actually seek these things out, because you still have central desire. Even though you plan to live in your country and you're maybe never going to see durian fruit ever, you're not enlightened yet. Because if you would have been exposed to this fruit, your mind would have been repulsed by it. So you would actually like to try different foods and different fruits and different vegetables as you travel around the world, to try to make sure that your mind doesn't have central desire. And that's where you're going to get very liberated, and your mind's going to become very free. And you'll be able to see that in your mind, that you get more memory, you get more focus, you get more concentration, your relationships are going better. Like I mentioned, you don't get tired, you don't get exhausted. Your mind has sustainable energy all day long. You're going to see all these benefits in others. And this is the results of having challenged your mind in this way. But you're not going to put poop in your mouth, because it would be unwise to do so. All right. So I don't see any other questions. So let's take a break here. It's 11 o'clock. what I usually do is on Tuesdays, we actually end up finishing early typically, because this is everything that I had planned to cover up till lunch. And then there's a topic that I usually cover when we get back from lunch, but this topic only takes me about 15 or 20 minutes to teach it. So I'm going to teach it when we come back from break. But then also, if you guys remember yesterday, I didn't teach the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots. I'm going to teach you guys that too. And we'll actually be finished before lunch today. So it might end up being like 12:15 or 12:30, but nonetheless, we'll actually finish everything by that time today, and then we'll be done for the entire day. So why don't you guys take like let's see, it's 11 o'clock. So why don't we take a 20-minute break? We'll come back at 11:20, and then I'll just finish out everything for the day. Okay. So thank you guys for your questions, and I'll see you guys after break. Okay.